What's going on, guys? It is MurderInc here, back with another Raid Shadow Legends video. Today I'm going to be going over the cheapest and pretty much easily obtained unkillable team for Ultra Nightmare, for Nightmare. I will go over all of that for you. And now, as always, when I start out these videos, I like to talk about where this came from. Now, I tried really hard to find the original video. It was Russian or Ukrainian. I'm not good enough to be able to distinguish between the two, and this person was using a folly at an extremely low speed. It was from a few months ago, and I tried really hard to figure it out. He used the folly as a stun soaker, using that passive of increasing the turn meter slowly throughout the 50 rounds, so everything stayed in sync. It was incredible to see. Since then, I'm sure some people have already made videos covering this. What I wanted to do is go over this team comp and also release a stun calculator so you know exactly who is going to get stunned, which is going to clear up the nightmare of all of this trial and error that you could possibly have when trying to replicate a team like this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the team that I'm going to use today. I made it as free to play as possible using rares and the Razin, since he is a fusion. And I'm going to show you the rotation, go over things you should be looking at and how to min-max. Then I'm going to go over the champions. Then I'm going to talk about the stun calculator. And I'll also go over the speeds you can use if you would like to use this in the Nightmare boss instead of Ultra Nightmare. So let's get right into it. Alright, so as we can see here, I am actually using Cold Heart. I think Cold Heart is important because if you are going to use a Cold Heart, usually people use her for Spider, Dragon Progression, Fire Knight, other things like that. So why not use a champion and give her a multi-use? There is a slight change in masteries. However, after looking into it, it's not going to affect all of your other dungeons a lot for sure. So we have Cold Heart here, we have Painkeeper, Maneater. Now, one thing important to note, because I know I'm going to get questions here, Maneater and Painkeeper are the only two champions that you need to make this team pretty much exist. That's it. All the other three DPS, it is up to you. Whoever you want to use, that's fine. But Maneater and Painkeeper are the only champions that you actually need. So now let's get into the run and see how we do here. So it's a very simple setup. You're going to start with the Unkillable with your Maneater. Next, you're going to reduce the cooldown with your Painkeeper. And now he's going to AoE. We're going to use random abilities. Doesn't really matter. You can A1 if you want. None of this matters in the end. A1 here. The next important thing to know is you're going to A1 with your Painkeeper in round just before round 2. Then you're going to hit auto. Now everything should be set. And keep in mind on who gets stunned on the first stun. And we're going to talk about it as we go on. So the first stun went on Cold Heart. Now let's think about that. Keep it in the back of your mind and remember that for when we look at this stun calculator. So now I have the Unkillable going off here. One thing that I did do is I actually have Cold Heart briefly getting into her. I'm using Giant Slayer on her, which is going to really increase her total output here. So there was another unprotected round with Painkeeper. This is totally normal, so don't worry about that. Now we have the heal going through. And now Kale took that second stun. So another thing to keep in mind, yes, Kale does have buffs on him, but with this calculator and inputting the information you need to, it's very easy to make this work, which is why I think it's really cool. And when we get to it, obviously I'm going to shout out the person who made the calculator. He's also the person who makes my thumbnails not look like I drew it with crayons, so I really appreciate him. So this is pretty much just the rundown. As we can see, Cold Heart does have the use of being able to add that poison to the boss, as well as the enemy a max health hit, which does quite a bit of damage, and it definitely adds up over time. So what I want to do now is, now that you've kind of seen the setup to this, how it basically works in the beginning rounds, after this, the stun is always going to go onto Kale based on how I have everything set up, with Painkeeper using that A2 to heal everyone just before the stun, and everyone else having healing masteries, so Kale will always be the lowest health. Even though there is 2 buffs on Kale, this all works out because of that stun calculator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this run until the end. We're going to go over the recap, talk about other possibilities you have of champions to make this team even better, since I'm definitely not using the most ideal champions for a team like this. So I will see you then, and we will go over all of that information. Alright guys, now that this run has come to an end, let's go over what we have going on here. 27.13 million damage, very easy setup. We have 8 million damage from Cold Heart, 3.5 from Painkeeper, 7.3 from Kale, 4.6 from Razin, 3.6 from Maneater. Now, as mentioned before, Kale is probably the worst champion I could have used here. Using someone like Frozen Banshee would have made this explode, and this would be an easy 2-key, which is actually crazy since I am using Cold Heart, Razin, not the best champions. Obviously, if you have Aothar, Dracomorph, you're going to easily 2-key this with this setup here. So this is very possible with the champions I have going on. And if you wanted to improve the gear, there's nothing too crazy on any of these champions. The big thing about why this team can do 27 million damage, hit that comfortable 3-key and not be a 4-key team, is simply because of how I pretty much speed tuned and masteried Cold Heart and Razin. That, I mean, as you can see, 8 million damage from Cold Heart, and even though I only did 4.6 from Razin, I didn't use the defense mastery on Razin, so he was counterattacking, and I'll explain why I did that. But the synergy I have is Razin always used defense down and weaken, and Cold Heart always used her Heart Seeker, even with Painkeeper resetting the cooldown. And that was a very crucial point. As mentioned before, Kale is kind of an awful poisoner. There's a lot of RNG. I even have him in a poison set, so he's doing weak poisons from his A1, weak poisons from the poison set, so you can really make this pop and easily get that extra damage to 2-key with this really cool budget team with pretty much minimal effort. So let's get into these champions and what I did with them. Starting out with the Maneater, we have 255 speed. That's the key thing to focus on for this part of the video. 100% crit is ideal. You don't need accuracy for this champion. You want to keep the health as low as possible. His skills are based on attack, so that is something you can choose to kind of use in your gearing, since you really don't want HP chest, HP gloves, all of these things together. I mean, he's not really built for damage. I've showed you damage Maneaters in the past and what they can do. So this one's kind of like half and half. Looking at the masteries for Maneater, I have pretty much a typical Ultra Nightmare mastery set where we have War Master, we have Life Drinker. Life Drinker is very important for this champion, and the ability to counterattack in that defensive tray. None of the other talents really matter besides doing increased damage under 50% health, which is just a quality of life thing. The next champion we have here is Painkeeper. Painkeeper is also at 100% crit rate. 240 speed is the speed for Painkeeper, so that's the key point here. 34,000 health, and Painkeeper's strange with what she scales off of. It's like HP, defense, and attack. So definitely don't go too big into HP and defense, as I will go over in the calculator. 186% crit damage, nothing crazy there. You can definitely boost that to 200% or more to get more value out of this champion. Going over the masteries, as we can see here, I actually only use the offense tray. I don't want the counterattack from the defense because that's going to mess up the turn meter, nor do I want Lore of Steel. So the only masteries you actually need is War Master and Life Drinker. That's pretty much it. There's nothing else to it, and you can get away with using masteries just like this and leaving the rest of it blank to ensure you're doing this perfectly correct. Now the next champion we have here is the Cold Heart I use. We have 33,000 health, 2800 attack, 186 speed, so that's the key point to focus in on. 85% crit rate, 297% crit damage, so this is a crit damage you would use for Spider, for Dragon, or Fire Knight. 250 accuracy is the only thing that is a little bit different than you would use in dungeons. In dungeons, all you really need is 200 to 210 accuracy. However, once you start getting into Ultra Nightmare, you do want the ability to land that heal reduction and also land that poison, unless you're running with an actual poisoner and you're not running with Kale. If you aren't running with Kale, you don't have to worry about accuracy at all, and it gives you a ton more freedom to build her with crit rate and crit damage to really make her Heartseeker stand out in her overall damage. But once again, 186 speed is what you should be taking away from this. The second part that's slightly different are the masteries. Now, instead of taking Flawless Execution or Helm Smasher, I gave her Giant Slayer, and obviously she has a 4-hit on her A1. With the defense tree, she's also counterattacking, so this actually adds a lot more damage than you would think, and it's really easy for her to heal up simply with the Life Drinker talent, since she has such a hard-hitting Heartseeker. So between all of these things, she's counterattacking all the time. She's proccing that Giant Slayer all the time, which is really cool to see. So these are the masteries that I would recommend using on a Cold Heart if you decide this is the champion you want in your team. Now the next champion we have here is Razin Scarhide. He's got 30.8 thousand health, 3900 defense, 187 speed. So that's what's to take away from here. One speed higher than Cold Heart to make sure he's applying that defense down on weekend, followed by a Heartseeker every time in sync, regardless of reducing the cooldown by the Painkeeper. So we have 94% crit rate, obviously 100 would be ideal, 239 crit damage, 285 accuracy, which I have way too much accuracy, but this is just the gear I chose to put on him today. Going to his masteries, he also has Giant Slayer, he has Life Drinker, he has the increased damage under 50% health. I did go the support tree for accuracy early on since I wasn't able to reach the accuracy with the original gear I had. The main talent you want to look at for Razin Scarhide is Master Hexer, which has a chance to extend the duration of any debuff you're placing, which would be that defense down and weaken. This is the only important part, and as mentioned before, definitely go around Lore of Steel to make sure all of your speeds are spot on. Now the final champion we're going to be talking about today is our slow champion who is soaking the stun. This champion has 42,000 health, being Kale, 1900 defense, 124 speed, 91% crit rate, 231 crit damage, 259 accuracy. Now as mentioned before, he is in a poison set to pretty much give this champion as much utility and value as possible, even though it's still very low compared to literally any other poison champion that you could possibly think of. Would definitely outscale Kale, especially in a poison set as well. Going over his masteries, he is also using the offense and support tree. However, once again, I did elect to go around Lore of Steel. I did take Cycle of Magic for that chance to reduce the cooldown, to get the poison cycling as often as possible since it is so RNG. Also Master Hexer, I'm doing the best I can with what I have, so even though it has a chance of extending 2.5% poisons, it can also extend those 5% poisons to give me as much value as possible. But those are all of the champions. As mentioned before, besides Painkeeper and Maneater, you can literally use any champions you want. If I really wanted to make the damage pop, I could probably even use 2 Cold Hearts, and that would do much better than using a Kale. But obviously using a Frozen Banshee, using an Aothar, a Cult Brawler, all of these champions are going to fill up the poisons on the debuff bar much quicker than Kale will. But I wanted to use him to show you that even using the worst champion possible in this situation, it can still do enough damage to 3-key an Ultra Nightmare. So now before I move on to the stun calculator, one thing I want to tell you guys is how can this be used in a Nightmare clan boss setting. Now the speeds for Nightmare, as far as I know, are 235 speed for your Maneater, 210 speed for Painkeeper. The 2 DPS are going to be 168 and 169 speed, and the slow champion is going to be 104 speed. Now this is going to get a little bit difficult hitting 104 speed if your champion has higher than 104 base. So this would mean giving Kale only 1 speed, which actually isn't even possible to give 1 speed to a champion. It just wouldn't work out. So this is something to keep in mind if you want to replicate it in a Nightmare setting. You have to use a champion and really look at the base speeds and say, is this even possible for me to add this low speed? Once again, 104 speed is the speed the slow champion will need. Alright, so now that I went over all of that, let's go over this awesome stun target calculator. So this is how easy it is. You type in the total HP, the total defense for all of the champions. The only ones that come stock are Man-Eater and Painkeeper. The rest you're going to have to type the names, which is why I didn't capitalize them so you could see that clearly. Now if you look into the third column here, it gives you the percentage chance of this champion getting stunned. As always, you can read the top here. It says this does not take into account any auras, buffs, or affinities. Auras meaning if you have an HP aura, this is going to change. You're going to have to manually calculate that into this equation and add that total HP, total defense, whichever aura you are using. And now let's think back to my run where I said, look at who gets stunned. This even knows that based on the defense and HP, the target that's going to get stunned first was going to be Coldheart. And after that, Kale would be perfect in the cycle. Now, one thing to know that can really help you out if you are trying this, definitely use 2 attack-based champions instead of 3 defense-based champions. This is going to make your lives a lot easier. I've tested this out myself. The reason why I say this is because in the beginning rounds, there is no Unkillable. Their health isn't depleting to 0 from the AoE since not enough damage is happening. So an unlucky crit can sway where the stun goes, and the only champions that cannot be stunned are Man-Eater and Painkeeper. As soon as one of those champions are stunned, you're just going to have to end the key, or you can go for as much damage as you can to try and stay within whatever key threshold you're trying to reach. But if Man-Eater and Painkeeper are stunned, the run's pretty much over. I mean, theoretically, there is a way where you can reset it. It would be very difficult. You would have to go AoEs with 0 Unkillable on, so you're relying on that and not dying on top of that. So all of these things to keep in mind. I recommend using someone like a Kale and Coldheart was what I did, because I knew Coldheart was weak enough to always take that stun early on to make sure none of the other champions did. Since Kale, in getting the stun soaker roll, needs the highest HP, which means it's very likely this champion isn't going to be stunned in the early rounds. So as I just mentioned, how to counteract that, low defense, low health on an attack-based champion pretty much guarantees they're going to get stunned, but they're also not going to die because there's not enough damage, even if they are crit. Obviously, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a link below to this spreadsheet, but I'm also going to leave a link to the Discord that Rust has, where you can join and ask him any questions you want, since he has put in a lot of work into this calculator. He has done a ton of work with this type of team comp. If you want to use an ally attack, if you want to use any interesting interaction with champions, he probably knows all of the answers. So I highly recommend joining that Discord, showing him some love. Definitely give a huge shout out to Rust in the comments. He definitely put a lot of work into this. He did ask me a few questions, but I'm not going to take any credit for this. This is literally all his work, and I really appreciate what he did for this calculator. This is definitely going to help a lot of people, and I know a lot of people were already looking forward to this calculator specifically. So now with that being said, another thing I do want to know in the comments, let me know what type of champions you are going to use. Something that I personally considered, I didn't want to try it for this video because I didn't think it would be the best showing, as I want to show how this is kind of a budget, really efficient and really powerful team composition with these 2 champions. Do you think it is possible with legendaries to 1-key with a composition like this if you used 3 crazy damage dealing champions? Obviously my go-to 3 champions would be Dracomorph, Septimus, and Brachus. All 3 of them are attack type, so it has pretty good synergy with guiding the stuns and who it's going to go on. Let me know what you think. Do you think you can 1-key with this? Would you consider testing that? This is something I want to know. Alright guys, as always, thank you a bunch for watching this video. Hopefully you enjoyed everything I just talked about here today. As you know, I love making clan boss teams. If you like this content, don't forget to subscribe, turn on that notification bell so you don't miss my next upload. And I will see you all in the next video.